folks, it's Mike Taggart. In this episode, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite flies. It is a nymph. Believe it or not, as many dry flies as I tie, one of my favorite flies is a nymph. Who'd have thought it? Well, anyway, it's called the Purple Prince, and it actually goes by many different names. The first one is to understand that it started out as a brown forktail. That's the history of it. Now, the brown forktail was being supplied to Buzz Busick, a prominent distributor and pro fly tyer. Now, Buzz, of course, couldn't make all the flies he had in his catalog, so he would get other tyers to do it for him. And one of those fly tyers was Dave Prince. And he would provide the brown forktail to Buzz. Well, it just so happens Buzz had to put out his spring catalog, and he wanted to include Dave Prince's brown forktail. He couldn't quite remember the name. As the legend goes, he put it down at the last minute as the Prince Nymph. And it's been that way ever since. It caught on, it went wild all over the country, everybody used it. This is a version that came out later when they started to get really into synthetics and experiment with colors and things. It's known by a couple of different names. The fly formerly known as Prince, the Psycho Prince, several different things. But the big key ingredient is that it uses a purple body. This is the method I use to tie it. I find it very, very successful and highly productive. The brook trout up on the upper Rapidan seem to like it a lot. I've caught many trout on this fish, on this bug. I've caught many other fish, bass, all kinds of sunfish have hit it. It's a great, productive fly. So I hope you enjoy it. This is my version tying it. And please, as always, if you do like it, remember, if you catch a fish with one of my flies, take a picture of it, identifying the fly and the fish, and send it directly to me at attainableflies.com. Then I'll hand tie you a dozen of that particular fly. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this instructional. I hope it don't bore you too much when I do it. Okay? Thanks, guys. And here we are at the tying bench. Now, these instructions are the way I tie this fly. There are other ways to do it, but this is the way I do it, and it works for me. So, we've got our thread, we've got our hook, we've got our brass bead on there. And so the first thing we're going to start with is a little bit of our wire, lead wire. Now, I keep referring to it as lead wire because a lot of your instructions will refer to it as that. This is actually a no lead. Now, I'm going to take and just kind of pinch that in over just a little bit, just so I can start a bend. There we go. And you see I've got a little straight piece there. That's going to slip underneath that bead. And I want it there because that's going to hold that end down. And it also helps to lock that bead in place. I'm just going to do a few wraps around here. Keep that compressed in. And we're making kind of a spring around the hook shank here. After you get a couple on there, it'll stay a little bit better. So you can see how that's spiraling around. And you could tie a little thread on there if you want to help keep it from moving. Don't have to. There we go. Now we're getting there. Now, if I'm tying a bunch of these, I will actually put this into an old bobbin that I have, and that will help spin that around as you do this. And I kind of want this to take up about half of the hook body. It's going to really depend on how heavy you want this fly to be. Now, when I fish these, I'm typically fishing them in a little bit faster water. So I want it to get down. I want it to be heavy. This is a great bottom fly if you're euro nymphing. It is a big fly. One of my friends commented that it was tying this in a size 12. He's never seen anything bigger than a size 14 in a nymph. And I said, well, you know, can't help it. Mine's bigger than yours. I said that, and now I'm going to go to internet jail. You can actually tie these any size you want. I've seen them tied as big as size 6. That's a big fly for this. A lot of people will tie these in a 10. Now, what I'm doing here is I've tied my thread and I've made a little dam right here at the end. That kind of pushes all that weighted wire forward, and I'm doing big open spirals and then coming back in big open spirals, and you should see that that's making kind of a net of thread over top of this. Don't rush this step. Yes, you could just start cranking thread on there, but you're going to waste a lot of thread and get a lot of frustration trying to cover that wire up. That wire is what you really want to cover because that'll detract from the overall quality of the fly. So let's get some good crisscrosses on there. As you get them on there, then you can come back in and just kind of bury it. Now those crisscrosses will hold that thread up and keep it from dropping down in between those individual wraps. So we're going to get a good thread wrap down on there. I'm going to come down the hook shank a little bit. And I'm going to come right to the bend of that hook. Now, different people do this in a different order. This is the order that works for me. So my next piece are going to be the brown buyouts and a little bit of the gold wire. Now, you can use copper if you want. I like using gold. It's nice and shiny, and you can really see it when you rib it across there. So we're going to put the gold wire in first. Now, when you put this wire in, most people will tell you put the wire all the way up to the top. But because we have so much weight here, we want it down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go right to where we ended our weighted wire. And then I'm going to tie that in nice and tight. I want good wraps on this because I don't have a whole lot of wire there to grab onto. The last thing I'm going to do with the thread is I'm going to come in and put a little ball of thread right here at the end. You can see that building up a little, whoops. See that building up a little bit. Let me slow down. There we go. I want to just get my thread out of the way for a second. As I do this, then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pull off 2 of the little buyout fibers. I dropped it down here in my little waste bin. So I've got it. And some people will tell you to hold these in an X and then put them on there. What I'm doing is I'm going to put them on one at a time. So I'm going to measure from the bead to the end of the thread. And then I'm going to tilt it towards me just a hair because I'm going to pull this around as I tie it. So I want it to be on top. I'm just going to put a couple of holding wraps on it. Then I'm going to take my next biot and I'm just going to measure it so they're about the same length. And so I'm looping that on. There we go. Now I can put some tightening wraps on that. Now I'm only taking the tightening wraps to where the lead bend ends. So where that lead ends, I'm going to just trim that off. And that's going to help fill that little divot in. If you see me tie a golden retriever, it's very similar in the way that I tied the golden retriever, any of the flies that you're putting no lead or lead wire on. You're going to get that little taper right there, and you want to kind of fill it in to get a good even body coming across. So I'm going to bring my thread back, fill all that in, get a nice taper going there. Okay. Now I'm going to bring this all the way to the end. Now, we're going to put some dubbing on here. And as we put the dubbing on here, I'm going to do this with a dubbing loop. You don't have to, but I like the fact that the dubbing loop will get the dubbing all kind of wrapped and tight, and I don't get too bulky of a body. So the dubbing spinner that I use is the spinny top looking one. I don't know if that has a particular name, but that's the one I'm going to use. I like it. It's nice. The ones that are a hook with a spin handle and things, I just find are bulky. This one, I can do a really nice job of spinning this little dubbing noodle here, and it's great. It's not like I'm making a dubbing brush or anything like that. This is going to be just dubbing in here. I'm going to take a little pinch here of the purple. First of all, you're going to separate the fibers so they're loose and they're fluffing. Almost drop some of it there. Now the wax that I used is J. Stockard's Touch Dub wax. Use your favorite dubbing wax. And we're just going to get a little bit of this dubbing started on this thread. Give it a little twist just to get it in there. And we're going to spread that dubbing out. We don't want it super thick. I've got a big clump of it right there. I'm going to spread that out a little bit because we're going to tighten it up. So now I've got that in there. I'm going to pull my bobbin out of the way and just give it a good spin. Now, I've got English hackle pliers here. I'm going to grab onto my little bit of dubbing here, flip it free, and then I'm going to bring that dubbing around. That's going to get my purple body there. I want it a little bit shaggy there, but I don't want it super shaggy. And by using the purple thread underneath, I'm not too worried about having, a different color showing through. On right here towards the end, you can see I've left it a bit shaggy. Almost dropped it. I'm just going to bring that around and tie that in. There we go. So what I've got here is a nice, not huge body. It's got a little bit of bugginess to it. Now, to really turn this into a prince, I'm going to come in and I'm going to wrap my ribbing around. And I want to try and get at least 5 wraps. But more importantly, you want, anytime you do wire ribbing, you want it to give you a nice even space. And that nice even space looks like the segmentation of the bug's body. There you go. That's pretty good. I'm going to reach in here and just clip that wire off. You know, you can helicopter it off if you want. I like just trimming it, mashing that a little bit down. Now, really, honestly, truly, you could almost finish this fly and it would fish just fine, just like this. However, it's not a prince at this point. Now, I'm just going to give a little haircut here across the top, get some of this fuzzy out of here. It's a little bit too much for me. Just kind of trim the hedges. There we go. That's nice. Now, the next thing we're going to tie in, and this is where my pattern deviates a little bit from other patterns, in that I come in and I'm going to put my white biots a little bit further down the body of the fly than what you would typically see. And you'll see that in just a second. There we go. And again, I'm going to pull out 2 white biots. This goose is trying to bite me here a little bit. There we go. Now I've got my 2 goose biots here. And just trim them off that little bit of rachis that's there. And these ones, again, you can tie them in one piece. I don't have as much success doing it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie them one at a time. And you want it to come just to the bend of the hook, the end of the bend right there. So I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put my finger on it. I'm going to hold it in place, put a holding wrap on it. And you want this to be at about a 22-degree angle, splaying out. From here, I'm going to put the other one on top in the other direction. Again, I'm going to match the size, swing it out, and tie it down. Okay, now I'm going to turn this so that you can see that little V that's right there. Okay. Now, I'm going to come in and just trim the ends back up in here. Don't worry about that little flap sticking out because we're going to cover all of that. So don't worry about that. The voice you hear in the background is my wife is working today on a Sunday. So she's up there talking to her supervisor, I think. Now, I use strung hurl for this. And as I use the strung hurl, I want to pick out a couple of nice pieces. And I'm going to use about 2. And I'm going to tie in from the tip ends so that the fibers are pointing forward. So I'm going to grab them here. Just give them a little holding wrap Pull them back, line them up. There we go. Now, there's a lot of people who talk about different ways of doing peacock herl, and they come up with all kinds of fun things. 2 wraps here, you only want to do just a little bit right here. This is just giving it a thorax. Now, in a Prince pattern, typically the body is peacock. And that one broke on me, so I'm just going to tie it down here. Just roll it around, catch it back up onto the thread, tie it down. Not a disaster. There we go. Now, the next piece, and this is, again, one of the places where I deviate from the way other people tie this, is I'm going to use a fairly short and stiff hackle. And that's going to get tied in right here behind the bead, right in front of that herl. Now, other people would say you got to tie it in under the herl and wrap it around and this, that, and the other. Well, that's theirs. This is mine, my version. I've got a little bit of the stem under here. Just nip that little bit of stem off. There we go. So that little bit of rachis was sticking out there. Now I'm just going to come in and I'm going to lightly hackle this. So that's only 3 turns. That's all I want, because I don't want it to be a dry fly. This is a heavy fly, and I want that to look like legs on the bug more than I want it to look like a dry fly wing. So that's what I'm doing with it. So now I've got all this nice stiff fibers right there, and I'm going to bring my thread around, and I'm going to use a whip finish tool. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to whip finish a nice little collar built up right on that bead. And so what I'm doing is I'm using that bead as a guide. Pull it through, nice 3-4 turn whip finish. Now, I'm going to tell you, this fly is a fly that will take a lot of abuse. But I have had them come apart right here with just a whip finish. And that's because those trout will tear it up. So this is my version of a half hitch. I'm going to do right in there just to pull that right down. And what I'm doing, and these are available from my good friend Jim Bessinger over at Fiber Dubbing Flies. This is a Stonefo, or no, I'm sorry, this is a Renzetti bodkin. And watch, you just put your finger on the end, loop your thread over, pull this out, and you're making that magic 4. Pop your finger out, and then this guides your thread down exactly, precisely where you want to have it. That's a fun knot, and it does a very good job. My good friend Alex Collina taught me that knot, and I thank him very much for it. I use it a lot. I might even do a whole video on that. Now, I'm going to use a little tiny bit of UV resin on here, and this is Solarez Bone Dry Thin, and I'm just gently putting that right where the bead and the thread meets. And I'm not putting a lot on there. Hit that with the light. I can rotate that around. Just let that UV cook. There we go. I can see that I've got one little barb that I got a little drop of UV on there. So now that barb is good and stiff. So I don't want eyes on my bug here. I'm just going to trim that down. Just following that one fiber down, clip, and out it goes. There it is. And just to dress everything up, just give it a little brush. Just make sure all the fibers go in the direction you want. That, my friends, is the Purple Prince. I hope you like it. It fishes very well for brookies. You can use it on a Euro rig. You can use it drifting under an indicator. It's a little heavy to put under a dry fly unless you use something like a chubby Chernobyl or something that's strong enough to hold it up. It is a great fly and good, versatile, and the brook trout in our area absolutely go gaga for these. And they're fun. They're a great fly. They cast very well. They drift really well. It's just a really good all-around version of the Prince Nymph. Some would call it a Psycho. Some would call it a Purple Prince. I call it my Purple Prince, and that's the method I use to tie it. All right. Thank you very much. Until next time, I'm Mike Taggart at AttainableFlies.com.